is the life story of our human body, the most extraordinary machine we'll ever know. We're about to take a journey that will reveal some of our deepest secrets and shed light on the mind-boggling changes our bodies undergo as we move through childhood.
There are all kind of amazing things that are happening in the body that we tend not to even consider.
From our industrial strength skeleton,
bone is stronger than steel,
to the high-tech hardware inside our heads.
The human brain is far more efficient and effective than a digital computer.
It will revolutionize the way we think about ourselves, and you'll never look in the mirror the same way again. This is our story, our body in numbers. Throughout our lives, our body is performing wonders. And this is the life story of what happens to every one of us, from conception to birth, from toddler to teenager, from adult to old age. We're using numbers to unlock our body's secrets and to represent some of its eye-opening capabilities in a way which you will have never seen before. For instance, every day our heart pumps enough blood to paint this entire ship twice over. And our lungs breathe enough air in a single day to fill all these balloons. Now we're setting out to follow our first footsteps, from toddler to 10 years old. And what a ride it will be. From learning to walk,
the amount of growth that occurs in a very young child is phenomenal,
to learning to talk.
The brains of children are like sponges. They just absorb all that information.
Our guide map along the way will be our own body, and the downright shocking statistics it generates every second of every day. By the time we arrive at our first birthday, we'll have slept for a whopping 248 days. That's the equivalent of an adult sleeping over 16 hours every single night for a year. If we lay down a pillow for every day we sleep up to the age of 1, it looks like this. At 12 months, we'll have gone through 560 pints of milk and produced a staggering 38 gallons of urine. That's the equivalent of all these diapers having to soak up nearly 2 bathtubs full. But we're just getting started. Now the world is about to change as we get ready to take a giant leap for mankind. And to do this, we need to walk. Because when we're babies, if we need to get around, we try and hitch a lift. Or if we have to go it alone, we can crawl. Like young Tyler here. On all fours, he can clock up quite a distance. In fact, all those trips across the carpet add up to over 100 yards in an hour. Learning to walk is one of the major milestones in our lives, and it's no easy task. But when Tyler manages to stand up in that wonderful moment of coordination, that's when we really start to travel. So what do our expeditions across the room add up to once we learn how to walk? Well, imagine that each pair of these shoes stands for a yard. This is the ground we can now cover. It's 6 times the distance, a mighty 668 yards in 1 hour. These shoes are definitely made for walking. This is also a critical juncture, because it's during these early travels that we'll each develop our own unique style of walking, which will stay with us throughout our lifetime.
Different people walk rather differently. Some people seem to sort of glide past relatively smoothly, and some And the terminology, rightly or wrongly, is Cluck's walkers will be very heavy, and you'll see them sort of bouncing down the street and sort of bump, bump, bump.
But however we get along, walking will completely transform our lives. By the time we're full grown, we'll be taking 9,000 steps every day. And all this movement would be impossible without an incredible network of engine parts we call our muscles. No matter what age we are, surprisingly, we all use 200 muscles just to walk. To do that, we operate 33 muscles in each foot alone. In all, we control 640 muscles across our body beautiful, no matter what size they are. So, inch for inch, pound for pound, which muscle do you think is the most powerful?
The leg muscle?
The heart.
Your legs.
The quadriceps?
The brain.
Any muscle in the stomach.
Actually, they're all wrong. So if it isn't the muscle in our back or buttocks, or the one which pulls our thigh back when we're walking or running, and it isn't in our shoulders, neck, or arms, where is it? In fact, it's not being exercised in the gym, but it is here. Meet the receptionist.
Hi, gym reception. Hi.
Many of us like to talk, and right now, she's exercising the most powerful of our body's muscles,
Yes, that's fine.
in our jaw.
That's sure.
We use these muscles mainly for the moving of the jaw, and they are extremely strong, particularly in our ancestors when we used to chew on bones much more than we do today.
Whenever we chew or talk, the movement of our jaw is so quick and effortless, we barely notice it. It's only when we compare it to a big movement, like this man lifting weights, that we can see just how many times we use our jaw muscles when we speak. In just a 30-second conversation, he might have to lift his dumbbells over 100 times just to keep up.
Sure.
That's a lot of reps. But if you want to see a really fast jaw workout, watch this guy.
Speech can be defined in several ways. The expression of thoughts and feelings by articulate sounds, or can be a formal address delivered to an audience. It can mean a sequence of lines written for one character in a play.
David Coker can read aloud at great speed, reaching around 360 words a minute. His tongue is twisting and turning better than a contortionist, and his vocal cords are vibrating up to 500 times a second. Impressive as it seems, we all have this ability, because imitating sounds, no matter how fast or slow we do it, is what language is all about. In fact, every baby's brain is hardwired to recognize sounds from the 6,000 different spoken languages across the world.
The language capacity is uniquely developed in humans. The children have this basic computational machinery, a language module, let's say, and then this operates on the specific information that comes in depending where you grow up.
So whether we grow up in Seattle or Shanghai, we quickly develop the ability to pick out and recognize our mother tongue. By 1, most of us can say a few basic words. And by 2, we are often joining them together. When we get to 3, we're notching up about 10 new words a day. That's a word every waking hour. And by our 5th birthday, we'll already know around 2,000 of them. We could grow up to use the 171,000 words in the Oxford English Dictionary. But even if we did, nobody would understand us, because on average, we end up using only about 20,000 words in all. No wonder crosswords are so tough. But it's not just learning words. Think about the dexterity needed when we first try and write them. Pinpoint precision, controlled movement, it's not easy. The simple task of holding a crayon requires the coordination of around 40 muscles. It's little wonder most of us find drawing, even writing our name, a bit of a challenge when we first start out. But master the technique, and some of us can achieve incredible results. David Fulford specializes in anatomical drawing. He can manipulate his hand muscles with a level of precision that makes most of us feel clumsy.
The hand is extremely complicated. There are up to 6 or 8 muscles attached to each little finger, and the thumb has a special group of muscles, but there are also attached to each of those muscles 4 or 5 little muscles that enables the very fine control that we may use, like holding a pen and other fine movements.
And it's this intricate design of our hand which sets us apart.
I think the reason that man has progressed and is man is basically because in the lower primates, in the monkeys, the thumb is set much lower down. Obviously I can't move my thumb, but the thumb is much lower down, and the monkey finds it very difficult to do a proper opposition movement, to put the soft tissue of the thumb onto the soft tissue at the points of the fingers, which we call the pulp. And that ability to do that movement has lifted man, I think, above most of the other primates.
But walking, talking, and writing is just the beginning. At 4, we'll be out of the door and on to the next stage of our body's journey, discovering the world around us. With about 1 million new connections made every second, our 4-year-old brains will be tested like they've never been before. We're exploring our body's amazing abilities and secrets, and the extraordinary numbers that lie behind everything we do. Most of us take our bodies for granted. Our self-operating, self-repairing machine with the finest components ever made. But as a child, it's not always so easy. Take the typical 4-year-old. We're endlessly curious and into everything. But first, we've got to process the information about us. And to do that, we need great sensors. Our eyes, for example, are capable of picking out 7 million colors. Our ears can pick up 1,500 different levels of sound. And then there's everything we touch. Both Andrew and Barney here have just been struck by a thorn, and they're receiving information very fast from their touch sensors. It's no surprise, because we're literally covered in them. In fact, every square inch of our body contains 27,000 nerve endings, 225 pressure sensors, 1,800 pain sensors, and 108 heat sensors. They make up an intelligence-gathering system more sophisticated than any computer program you could shake a stick at. Our nervous system, which is 65,000 miles long, enough to stretch around the world 2.5 times.
When we touch something, there are at least 3 different things we can feel. One is vibration. The other thing is a sense of where my finger is in space. Is it here? Is it here? Is it here? And finally, there's a sense of texture. If it's something soft, or is something harsh, or is it rough, or is it smooth?
But how is all this possible? Well, inside our 4-year-old's developing brain is an extraordinary switchboard or control center. And with every new experience, their brains are receiving thousands of calls from all their sensors.
The signals can travel as fast as 100 meters per second, which means the moment you touch something, it's almost instantaneously in the brain.
So imagine how much information is coming in from all our sensors. Well, lucky for us, we have thousands of synapses or phone lines for every cell and neuron in our brain. That's an exchange with around a staggering 100 trillion lines. That's like being able to handle everyone on Earth making around 15,000 different phone calls at the same time. Because it's not just our touch sensors that are busy. All the information we get from our senses is crucial for our preservation and survival. And while our 4-year-olds can only recognize basic flavors,
the taste of strawberry,
their developing sense of taste helps to protect them against dangerous toxins and poisons.
Not very nice.
For instance, it's hard for a sharp or acidic flavor, such as a drop of lemon juice, to hide from our taste buds even in this much water. But our ability to taste is dependent on our ability to smell. And we have millions of sensors up our nose.
It smells nice. That one smells like perfume.
Even at 4, we have an instant opinion about each one.
I don't like it.
The amazing part of this nose is that there's no limit to how much we can smell. And we're constantly doing it, whether we realize it or not. And it's a part of our taste, and it's a part of actually recognizing our environment.
What do I most dislike the smell of? Probably like underarms. Fish.
Smell of sweat.
Garbage truck, yeah. Cigarettes.
Our 4-year-olds' noses are also responsible for filtering out dust particles, which is lucky, because we breathe in 20 billion of them a day. No wonder we sometimes sneeze. And when we do, guess how quick it is? The fastest sneeze ever recorded was clocked at 100 miles per hour. At 4 years old, we're starting to build up a whole collection of experiences, giving us our own unique understanding of the world. As our knowledge grows, so do our bodies. And at our center is a most brilliant piece of engineering. Without it, we'd be a quivering mass of flesh. Our skeleton, an incredible chassis 4 times stronger than concrete, but as light as carbon fiber. As far as structural engineering goes, our human skeleton is unparalleled. And it's a lot more complicated than any bike frame. It hasn't just got 1 or 2 shock absorbers, but several hundred. On top of that, the supporting structure of a bike requires only one main movement, turning the handlebars. On our body, there are hundreds of movements. Just look at these capoeira dancers and see how their bodies can bend and twist. It's relatively advanced stuff, but mechanically it's not too far removed from what most 4-year-olds' bodies are capable of. And we're able to make all these movements thanks to the suppleness of our backbones and their 33 vertebrae.
When we have a vertebra somewhere here in the back, that vertebra and the next vertebra will have a cushion between them and allow a little bit of movement. But if I have 30 of those, one on top of another, I can then move my back by different movements, and those little cushions, each of them is allowing 1 or 2 degrees of movement. When you've got 25 to 30 of those, you then have 30 or 40 or 50 degrees of movement within the back.
But only when we see the complexity of our whole skeleton can we appreciate how stunningly engineered it all is. There's no modern material on this planet that comes close to our bones. And just to represent the main parts of our skeleton, we needed to take apart more than 6 bikes.
Bone is pretty close to the strength of steel, but the important thing about bone is that it's much, much lighter.
There are 14 bones in our face. We have 24 ribs and 33 vertebrae. There are 27 bones in each hand. And 26 in a foot. And when it's all put together, we have 206 bones in all. Amazingly, our skeleton only takes up 20% of our total body weight. But that's only part of the story, because bone is even more impressive on the inside.
Very important thing about bone is that it's hollow inside. It will have bone marrow, which has got the cells that produce blood.
Marrow is the home of our body's blood factory, and every second, our bones produce 2 million red blood cells. That's 120 million per minute, and 173 billion blood cells every day. If a blood cell was a blade of grass, then we would each make enough to cover nearly 1,000 soccer fields every single day.
Bone is very, very clever. Based on the way that we use our bones, it will grow in mass, in size, and it will also change its shape to reorientate, to accept forces. So if we start doing another exercise that we don't normally do, it'll redesign itself.
When we're 4 years old, we have no idea how much punishment we are putting our bones through every day. Just guess how much we load onto some of the bones in our feet and legs when we land from a jump. Well, it's over a ton in weight, the equivalent of a car. Pretty amazing, no? Let's take a simple movement like the sit-up. We don't think about it, but the forces and pressures on our body are huge. It creates the same force on our lower backbone as 570 feet of water on top of a diver. And all over our body, the story is the same. Yet we can also twist, turn, rotate, and move in this frame that's as flexible as it is durable. Our bones also have to deal with all the power from our muscles. They're linked together by fibers called tendons. Our strongest, the Achilles tendon in our heel, can withstand an incredible load. So just how much weight would it take to snap it?
About 300 pounds?
200 pounds?
1,500 pounds.
Probably 20 pounds.
Incredibly, a tendon just the size of a fist can suspend the weight of 58 tons, or a load as heavy as 2 tractor trailers fully laden. But however robust our mechanics are, our developing bodies are not going to get far without fuel and air. Have you any idea how much we breathe every day? How many balloons would we fill? Our bodies have an impressive system to propel us through our lives. What's even more incredible is how it all fits inside us. At 5 years old, our bodies have already passed some important markers. Our eyes have blinked over 21 million times. Our hearts have pumped over 3 million gallons of blood. We can walk and talk, run and have fun. We know 2,000 words. But we're really only at the beginning, because now we're off to school. Suddenly our 100 billion brain cells are going to be stretched with new ideas, new environments, and new skills. Preschool was just play. Now we have to sit down and be taught. And that means we have to concentrate. And we're not going to get far without our daily intake of oxygen. And when we're young and active, we can get through a lot of it. Fortunately, we've got some pretty smart tools to help us out here. Our lungs. They're really just giant sponges made up of tiny air sacs called alveoli.
There are literally millions of alveoli. It's said that the alveoli, when spread out, would fill a tennis court or something of that magnitude.
So if all those tiny air sacs were stretched out, they might look something like this. On top of that, our lungs expand and contract thousands of times a day as we extract oxygen from the air and pass it on to our blood. But despite their size and all that movement, they fit neatly inside our ribcage. Our lungs can shift about half a quart of air in one very deep breath, and we breathe 12 times a minute. This balloon contains 6 quarts of air. It represents the amount of air we breathe in every minute, just standing still. If we're walking, our intake of air increases to 30 quarts a minute. During exercise, we can use up to 13 balloons worth. That's 80 quarts. And in one day, we breathe in 10,080 quarts of air, enough to fill about 1,680 balloons. This may seem rather a lot to propel us through just one day, but when we're young, our bodies have got a lot to do. And after a long, exhausting day of breathing, we will sleep soundly in our beds. By 7 years old, we will already have spent over 3 full years asleep. But during this time, our bodies have been far from inactive. They're busy growing at a rate of about 2 inches a year. Thanks in part to all that fresh air and rest, when we hit 7 years old, we will be twice the height that we were at 1. And containing all this growth is a strong, self-repairing coating that's waterproof, that's absorbent, that's sensitive, and more. It's an extraordinary piece of equipment. It's our skin. 7-year-old Rupert is covered in about a square yard of it, and when he's grown up, he'll have nearly 2.5 square yards of skin. And it's not just a coating, it's the largest organ on our body, weighing as much as 11 pounds.
In the top layer of the skin, we have a lot of sensations, a lot of sensory receptors. We have things like hairs, we have sweat glands. On a hot day, we all know that we are sweating, and that is the way of cooling down, getting rid of the fluid, cooling down the body.
In other words, our skin operates like a sort of natural air conditioner. Without it, our internal organs would overheat. The cooling function is performed through tiny pores, with 625 of them in just 1 square inch. That's millions of them over our entire body. In extremely hot weather, we can sweat over 3 pints an hour. But on average, we lose a pint of sweat every day. That's nearly 1 gallon a week. Or one of these containers full almost every month. So as well as keeping water out, all of these containers full of sweat will have passed through our skin. 48 gallons worth in just 1 year. But it's not just sweat that we're busy making. Inside us, we have a chemical factory working away day and night, producing unbelievable quantities of strange substances. If we bottled them all up in just 1 year, we'd make enough of them to fill this entire cafeteria. But just wait till you find out what some of them are capable of doing. We're laying bare the most incredible features and capabilities of our human body. And one of the most remarkable things is how we digest our food to get the fuel we need every day to survive. Hugo is only 8. He's already consumed, though, 1.5 tons of food in his short life. All that meat and vegetables, carbohydrate and fruit, adds up to the equivalent of a whole aisle of a supermarket. Turning all that food and drink into energy seems easy enough to Hugo. He just takes whatever he likes and lets his body do the rest. But inside him, the most amazing chemical factory is in production. And at every mealtime or snack time, the machine's full force is about to be unleashed.
A machine that's always working, maybe a machine that's processing water and liquids and fluids, it's always working, it's never at rest.
The body's digestive machine produces enough chemicals to fill this dining hall. And the first of these that we manufacture gets stimulated just at the thought and sight of all that food. It's saliva.
It actually starts digestion of starches, which are complex sugars, and it also lubricates the whole process.
All those mouth-watering movements add up to 1.5 pints a day. That's 11 pints a week, which is 48 pints in a month. Which in 1 year becomes a massive 579 pints. But that's just whetting our taste buds. Because when this food hits Hugo's stomach, any unwelcome germs and bacteria are greeted by the most powerful substance our body produces, hydrochloric acid.
If you drop that acid on a piece of wood or a piece of metal, in fact, it would start to dissolve it. It's hydrochloric acid, and if you were to carry that in a plastic jar, it would eventually dissolve the jar.
Yet our digestive factory makes 4.25 pints of hydrochloric acid every day. We don't make it in concentrated form, but in a year, we make 1,543 pints of it. In concentrated form, this would amount to nearly 127 gallons of highly corrosive acid over the course of a lifetime, enough to dissolve a car. But that's not all. Our body's chemical factory also produces bile, over 1 pint of bile each day. We make it to dissolve fats. It's like a detergent and made by our biggest internal organ, our liver. And our liver makes enough bile detergent to clean 154 square yards a day, which, if you measure it out, is the size of this area here. Enough to clean a couple of squash courts. It comes to this much in 2 days, this much in 3 days, and this area after just 4 days. In 1 year, our liver makes around 386 pints of bile. That would clean over 12 acres or 9 football fields. That's most of the fats and carbohydrates dealt with. But how about proteins? How do we break them down without dissolving our protein-rich insides? Well, the pancreas has its own clever way of handling this.
Although some of us may be made of sugar and spice and all those nice things, most of us are made of really protein and fat. So the pancreas has to package those enzymes so that they don't activate within the pancreas itself. They have to activate once they get into the intestine so they can digest the food and the nutrients right where the protein and fat is.
That's over 3 pints a day of pancreatic juice, making 1,157 pints a year. And to complete the process, our small intestine adds just over 2 pints a day. This activates the pancreatic juices and neutralizes any acid coming in from the stomach. In a year, we make 771 pints of intestinal juice. To give Hugo the energy he needs as he grows older, his digestive system has to process nearly 1/2 ton of food every year. And to do all that, his body will be making around 12 pints of different chemicals a day. Add them all up over a year, and this is what it looks like. An incredible 550 gallons of digestive fluid. That's enough to fill a 7-man jacuzzi. It seems like a lot, but without it, our food would be of no use to us at all. And of course, none of this would be possible if we didn't have a good set of teeth. And at 8, Hugo's first adult teeth have just arrived. From now on, he can really munch, crunch, and chew his food. For that reason, teeth need to be formidable tools. In fact, their coating of enamel is the hardest part of our body. And just look at how much chomping our teeth withstand. 1,500 bites a day. That's all these together, snapping away for around 10 seconds. And all the while, our stomachs are expanding and contracting, from the size of one shot glass to 43, holding about 3 pints.
When you eat food and you swallow, you're actually swallowing not only the food, but air as well. And air that accumulates in the stomach has to exit one way or another. And usually the way it exits is through a belch.
Some people have developed it into something rather remarkable. Meet Paul Hunn. Ever wondered what the loudest burp in the world would sound like? Well, here it is. His world record is 104.9 decibels. And believe it or not, it requires a brain to do this. Our brain is the home of 100 billion neurons with an insatiable appetite for knowledge and also blood. Our personal supercomputer has no equal, and once we've seen what it can do, we'll never be able to think about our brain in the same way again. Everything we do, every breath we take, every thought we have, every movement we make is decided by our brains. We're unaware of the 100 billion neurons transmitting information every moment of our lives. We can send a signal to our limbs at up to 224 miles per hour. We can process a picture in 50 milliseconds and read a facial expression in 40 milliseconds. And at 10 years old, our brain has almost reached adult size. We are now the custodians of the most complicated known living structure on the planet.
Imagine if you could take a journey inside the brain. Imagine you just go inside the brain and go up inside your brain, look at different parts. The parts on the side are responsible for receiving sound information. And next to them, there are parts of the brain that have to do with detecting signals that come from your fingers. And next to them is a part of the brain that helps you with making sense of the visual world. We have information from our eyes to help us with balance. Every millisecond, there are about 1,000 different calculations that take place. And it's millisecond by millisecond.
And our neurons are assimilating all this information all the time. They're firing at 200 times a second as we make another 3,000 calculations just to stay upright.
There are 100 billion neurons, and each neuron connects with about 1,000 to 10,000 other neurons.
If each of our brain cells was the size of a tiny pinhead, then our brains would measure 16 feet across. Yet if you actually opened up our brain, it would cover just 2.5 square feet, allowing it to be wrapped up neatly inside our head. So how do we compare with the best man-made technology? We know that computers have beaten us at chess. But does that mean the microchip finally has us licked?
We have not yet developed a computer that can compete with the human brain. Because while the brain is carrying out all these various activities, while it's performing a mathematical operation, it's still controlling everything else that we do, all of our behavior. As we're writing that information down, it's controlling that information that goes from touching the page and a pencil to controlling the motor movements to monitoring our breathing, to monitoring the activity of our heart, all the different functions that are going on inside the human body at any given time. It's really amazing.
This is one of the latest and lightest laptops on the market. It weighs just 1.5 pounds and can do up to 14 billion calculations a second. Our brains weigh around 3 pounds, but they're more powerful, capable of 100 trillion calculations a second. Quite amazing when you think that our brain is 77% water. And it can run on vegetables alone. And in turn, you can power a 20-watt light bulb from our little cells.
It's far more energy efficient. Any of you who use a laptop, it gets very hot. If your brain were to be that inefficient, you'd burn through your skull.
The amount of information that you can put in a human brain is almost endless, whereas most computers have an upper limit of how much information they can handle.
Our brains can do all this, and yet most of us don't even know what color they are.
The human brain is colorless, definitely colorless.
Probably like kind of a bluish purple.
They say it's gray matter, so maybe it's gray.
The human brain is like a grayish white.
The human brain is gray.
Actually, our brains are nearly all red, because our amazing supercomputer is fed with a pint of blood every minute. And another thing, our brain never switches off until the day we die. Even when we're asleep, our brain is busy repairing, building, and looking after us. And dreaming. We may not remember them all, but we average about 3 dreams a night. And so by the time we get to our 10th birthday, we will have had 13,358 dreams. That's more than the number of movies most of us will see in a lifetime. Now we've reached 10 years old and leaving our childhood behind. But we'll continue our astonishing journey as our body is transformed into an adult. How much sex will we have? How much skin will we shed? How many tears will we cry? And how many times will we laugh? All startling surprises in the journey through our body in numbers.
接下来，见识1000颗广岛原子弹爆炸的威力，真正的全球世纪大灾难正蓄势待发。超级火山，真正末日，接着播出。